listening to Marvel Talk with JT. And here's your host, JT.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Marvel Talk with JT. I'm your host, JT, and tonight we are going to be talking about Daredevil Born Again, Episode 7, titled Art for Art's Sake. Now, this one is probably the weakest of the 7 that we've had so far. And I'll explain why, but this is also the most talked about in positive and negative ways, around the community that I know, and that I've talked to with some people over, X and Facebook and in person. Some people love it, some people didn't. I'm a mixed bag of those. I'm kind of on both sides. I'm about 50-50. Not really 50-50. I'm like 60-40 that I liked it and didn't like it. But we'll get into it in a minute. But, honestly, I like the title. I really do. I like the title of this episode, Art for Art's Sake. And if you know anything about this show and a certain character, then you know what this episode's really based on. But it should have been called Who's Got the Secrets? And this whole season has been about secrets upon secrets upon secrets. I mean, you've got the secret of Matt Murdock as Daredevil. That's the biggest one of all. Then Wilson Fisk, he is, his secret is that he's still doing kingpin stuff. He's still doing that mob business-like stuff. Even though Vanessa looks like to be the forefront of his quote-unquote business, he's still, locking people up and fighting them and trying to beat them up and killing them and stuff. So he's still got that. I've said it before. They've both got that itch and they're scratching it. Then you've got the secret of Muse and what his story's about. And this is an episode that is Muse eccentric. We talk a lot about Muse in this episode, and that's one of my reasons why I love this episode. Some other secrets, the whole thing with Matt and Heather. You gotta play the boundaries, my guy. She's a therapist. She's gonna figure you out pretty soon. There's also some smaller secrets. There's one with Cherry and McDuffie. Who McDuffie's like, look, Cherry, you got to tell me what's going on if we're gonna be partners. And Cherry's like, I know, but it's not my secret to tell. He's talking about, obviously, Matt. But this episode was one where I wish it was longer because it is, I believe, the shortest of the 7, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it was a short episode. IMDb, I've referenced them in the past. Granted, you can take their scores however you want. It has it at an 8.2 out of 10. Still high, still solid episode, but on the lower end for this season. I think this episode was definitely one that it either should have been longer or should have gone a completely different way. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Daredevil is trying to get Muse, and Muse is, he escaped after beating and torturing Hector's niece, Angela Del Toro, and she's now cooped up in the hospital. And she's dealing with the ramifications of that. So you really gotta look at it and say, okay, Matt is doing a lot with, the backlash of the death of, Hector Ayala, the White Tiger. I still believe Angela's going to be the White Tiger, maybe in season 2, but that's for another conversation. So now you're dealing with, Fisk trying to. He put together this task force in the last episode, and the task force is basically his henchmen in a sense, and he wants his henchmen, this task force, to be the center of, to make him look good. and you'll see that later in the episode. But he's trying to get them all together on one team. They find out where Muse is hiding. They go and they search it and look for it. They realize, the cops and then the PIs and all the people who were involved. They find out that Muse is Bastion. We have met Bastion before he was Muse in, I think episode 2, I believe. He was one of the people at Heather's book signing, and he is an interesting figure. Now, take what you know about Muse in the comics, and if he's an Inhuman, what abilities does he have, whatever. In the MCU, the Muse that we know is a serial killer who his body count is 60 plus at this point. He is a stalker. He is an artist. Can't deny that. But he is also one to, if he wants it, he's going to get it. And there's a real interesting conversation between Heather and Muse in this entire episode. And Bastion basically tells his identity to Heather, but Heather figures it out real early in the conversation. And it gets real creepy. Your skin crawls because this dude is just weird. He is weird. And honestly, guys, it's one of those where you watch the episode and you're like, wow, this character is good. But then some other stuff happens that I'll get into in a minute with the spoilers. And then it ends with Fisk standing tall with his henchmen. So with that being said, let's jump into spoilers. So if you have not seen the episode, y'all know the deal already. Go watch it. You're probably not going to come back to this podcast. So if you're ready for spoilers, here we go. Muse dies. Muse is dead. That we know of. Okay, that we know of. During this conversation he has with Heather, Daredevil comes in because Daredevil finds out that he is stalking Heather and he knows who Heather is. And so he's in the room having a almost like a therapy session with Heather, and he kind of they kind of figure each other out. Heather figures out that he's Muse, and it just gets to the point to where it's again creepy. Your skin starts to crawl, and he's going to use her for what he does with all of his victims, where he takes her blood and uses it as spray paint and paints a mural on the wall. But an interesting note about Muse is that during this conversation with Heather, he is explaining his past and kind of his backstory in this one little conversation. And basically he just says that he's not been seen until he talked with Heather at Heather's book signing. And it was almost like, you were the one who set me free. You were the one who started this. And so Heather feels that guilt, kind of, saying oh, did I really do that? But then she's like, no, you're a serial killer, dude. You're a creep. This is on you. And that's when he grabs her. He kind of ties her up, and he even cuts her forearm. It's very graphic in the episode. So if you're squeamish to blood and cutting and stuff like that, then please, you're warned here. But here comes Daredevil to save the day. He breaks in and he fights Muse, and as Muse is going to grab Heather, Daredevil throws his grappling baton or whatever, and it goes right through Muse's chest cavity. It goes right through his chest almost. And then he gets pulled back on the ground. Daredevil punches him a couple more times. Muse gets off of him and turns and starts walking towards Heather. And Heather just fires 6 shots that apparently Muse has a gun, or maybe it was Heather's. I couldn't remember, but there's a gun in that instance. And Heather fires 6 shots into Muse. And he falls. And he falls so poetically. It's weird because you look at all this and you're like, you were painting murals on the wall or on the streets of New York, and Now look at you. You were in your own blood on a canvas, posed because you're dead. Like it was something about it was just poetic, I guess. I don't know. And then Heather obviously passes out because she's lost a lot of blood. Daredevil leaves because the task force, Fisk's task force, comes in and is searching around the area, doing some investigation. And Kingpin comes up, or I'm sorry, Wilson Fisk comes up, Mayor Fisk, and he's like, "What happened?" And they basically said, "Yeah, Daredevil was here." And every time, I want to call him Kingpin, but every time Fisk hears Daredevil's name, he gets this like twitch, like it's like a half like twitch, and he's angry. He's like he should not be in the streets. And if you go back to episode 1 or 2, at the very beginning, he does tell Matt, if you do your vigilante work, then you will pay for it. And so he's starting to do that. But Fisk, like I mentioned earlier, he says to Cole North, who is like the head of this task force, he's like, you killed Muse. You stopped him. You did this. Nothing about Daredevil will ever get out here. You did it. And so now at a press conference, you see Wilson Fisk with all of his men behind him, and they hold up Muse's mask, and they are proclaiming that it was them that stopped him. Yeah, so you see where I'm getting at, guys. Secrets upon secrets, and the false truth coming out, and how is that going to affect the rest of New York? Will more people like Fisk? Who knows? But Fisk is not done, because he also has a life outside of mayorness and his mob bossness. He has a wife. We all know and love Vanessa. Vanessa really, really wants to be. She wants to continue this business, and Luca, who is in the previous episodes, he's like the gangster tracksuit guy. He tells Vanessa like, why did Fisk do this? Why did he run for mayor? And Vanessa's like, I don't know. And he was like, well, maybe you should do something about it. And so we end the episode with Wilson sitting at a diner by himself. And here comes Luca after he gets a text message from Vanessa telling Luca where Wilson is by himself. And Luca walks in and he pulls a gun out on Wilson Fisk. And Buck, Wilson's right-hand man, who, if you know Buck, you know that he's Bullet in the comics, he kills Luca. And it's the funniest thing because Wilson's just sitting there by himself and he's like, thanks, Buck. And like, he's just like, that's it. So there's a lot to be said about that. Does Vanessa want to put a hit out on him? Is Kingpin and Vanessa having this like little game? Are they playing off of each other? Like, oh, you killed the guy that I had an affair with, so I'm going to try to kill you, but you know about it. So like, there's a lot of ways that you can portray this. So let's get into what the people have said. Like I mentioned earlier, this episode was a very mixed bag of emotions for people. A lot of people didn't like it because they killed off Muse so quickly and so just abruptly. Because really, we've only seen him in like a grand total of maybe 2 episodes full. Like, he hasn't been in this season long. And for him to be a character like that, where he is a serial killer, he does this artwork, he's like kind of calling out people like Kingpin, like Daredevil, like Punisher, just to kill him off after he has a little, like, he has a run-in with Vanessa, after he has a run-in with Heather, and Matt wants to stop him because of that. Like, I don't know. I would have drug it out at least till the finale. Maybe not season 2, but definitely the finale of this season. I do know that we are supposed to be getting a couple of new interesting things coming in episode 8 and 9. Those are the last 2 that are coming out. So who knows? Who knows where this will go? I'm excited. I still enjoy the show. I still enjoyed this episode. I just wish some things were changed a little bit. But like I've always said, I'm not a critic. I'm just a guy who loves this stuff, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion. This was the weaker of the entire 7 that we've seen, in my opinion, but it is still a very solid show, and I think it had a lot of hidden symbols in it for the totality of this season. Like I mentioned, 2 episodes remaining. I'm excited to see where we're going. I do hear a little bit of rumblings that the finale may be close to an hour long. I don't know if that's true. I will report that when I get that, but that's what I'm hearing. So, thank you guys so much for listening to Marvel Talk with JT. Again, I'm your host, JT, and I will see you next week for episode 8.